Even in an AI-focused world, MacroEdge is in the business of focusing on you. We don't just understand our clients, we listen to what's said and illuminate on what's not. In a world moving at the speed of light, with shifting markets, evolving workforces, and non-stop disruption, MacroEdge helps you to navigate and identify novel opportunities, expand your enterprise, and succeed in tomorrow's world. And it all starts with you. Put your enterprise and your perspective in the driver's seat. We're in the business of you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to MacroEdge Radio. This is John Galt speaking. It's Friday, September 19th, 2025. We are quite fortunate to have a special guest with us tonight, Amanda Goodall, better known as the Job Chick, now finally getting the recognition she deserves for the deep research she engages in, especially looking at what's been going on with the rotating data stream known as the jobs reports. But before we get into that, and we'll let some people get into the room, Amanda, I'm going to hit the markets real quick because there were some significant numbers today. I'll make it quick. Dow up 172 to 46,315. S&P up 3240 to 6664. Although we did hit the ever infamous 6666. NASDAQ up 160 to 22,631. Massive volume today on operations expiration. WTI down 89 cents to 62.88. Brent down 76 cents to 66.68. There's 666 again. Maybe it's the theme for this year. I don't know. Gold up 27.50 to 37.05 and change. Silver up 83 cents to 42.95, although it did breach 43. 10-year up 2 bips to 4.129. And the 2-year was flat. Not unexpected if you've been reading my pages or MacroEdge. Without further ado, I would like to welcome all of our listeners and the Job Chick. Amanda, welcome back to MacroEdge Radio.
Hey, John, thanks for having me again.
Has anything happened since we last talked besides you being on Fox Business?
I was on Fox Business. That was cool. That came out of the blue, very unexpected, very surreal, actually. But yeah, jobs, just, oh my gosh, so much. I was on what, earlier this year, like May, June, something like that?
Right before the summer, we had a discussion about this, how you and I were proclaiming how suspect the jobs data was and that the methodology was incorrect. And lo and behold, summer came.
Funny that, right? Yeah, you know, the BLS, the jobs data, everything that's coming out of the administration, and I think this goes for any administration, honestly, it's just, it doesn't make sense. And especially over the last several years. And this is just, you know, it's one part of why I do what I do, because the jobs data is there. The workforce data exists. What they're looking at beats me. I mean, it's just like, you know, I'm sure I don't know how they do all their surveying and stuff like that, but I'll tell you that it's not exactly the true picture.
No, and the problem I have with it, and I'm you and I talked about this, and it's purely methodology. Mm-hmm. And that really is frustrating from our perspective because we know a lot of the jobs data exists in the tax database. Mm-hmm. So if you're not in the tax database for payroll taxes, for 1099s, et cetera, then you're probably working illegally or on a cash job. It's pretty simple, and you can extrapolate some pretty good numbers from that. And then you can initiate the surveys to back it up or validate the data. But for some reason, we're still using the Postal Service for our surveys in an era when you and I can sit there and order a car online from Amazon. Please help me make sense of this.
I would love to try to. You know, it has to come down to it's a narrative. You know, to me, you know, when I look at all the numbers and, you know, and I don't do the big national look, but, you know, when I look at it from, you know, company to company, sector to sector, none of it matches anyway. Nothing that they're saying matches. And I think everybody that hears the numbers and you know, here's whether it's good news, bad news, whatever, you know, MSN you're listening to, reading, whatever, you're sitting there just going, what? There's a massive disconnect. And it's beyond me. It's beyond me. And it just, you know, when I look at it all, it just has to come back down to that narrative and creating what they want. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't know why, because to me, you know, there's a lot of reason to just go, you know what, it's been bad. let's fix it. Why aren't they doing that? There's so much behind the scenes stuff we don't get to see. So there we are. But job
Well,
seekers are still struggling.
that's the issue we're going to hit next, because when you look at the broader picture, and this is something that's disturbing to me, and I like EJ and Tony. We've had some online interaction, nothing big. However, I also feel like having someone in charge of the Bureau of Labor Statistics with a very weak background in statistics might be more than a problem, especially since this entire bureaucracy needs a top-down, bottom-up reorganization and restructuring to make it function. I mean, it's gotten to the point where, why issue the report at all? We're getting the same quality of data that we got in 1904.
Feels like it. Yeah, it is. And the numbers that just recently came out, the revisions that just came out, I mean, nobody's surprised. And if you are, I don't know what rock you're living under. But the next reports that are coming out, nobody's gonna be surprised. To me, who's gonna believe them? And I think that's the optics issue that the government has right now. Yes, you can change out the BLS chief, fine, do it, whatever. And you can in quotes, air quotes, I'm air quoting here, you can change the methodology and things like that and tell people, oh, we're changing this, and they're going to come out with whatever numbers they want. But unless the job situation change, unless companies change the way they're hiring, who they're hiring, how they're hiring, nothing's going to change.
Well, part of the interesting discussion on that, and we're seeing this now, where there's a convergence in the job market, where everybody who is 30 and under, and you've highlighted this, so let's start with that part of the job market first, is having trouble finding a job. At the same time, people who are 70 and over are trying to re-enter the workplace because inflation is killing their fixed income status. Offer first the younger generation. I made a comment on one of your threads, and I got a little bit of heat from some people. If I'm a employer and I have to deal with some of the emotional wrecks that I've seen with Gen Z, especially the ones that bring mommy and daddy in for their interview, I got a real problem with wanting to hire them versus a 60-year-old with a lifetime of experience willing to work for just 5% over what I would offer a college graduate. Is there a problem with the processing or the education or just common sense for that younger generation that's emerging? And it's not all of them, but there is a good portion that are trying to sit there and sell themselves and don't realize that an interview is when you have to sell yourself.
That's a good question. There's a lot of points, and I think it almost like triangulates a little bit, because you have the Gen Z group, and you're right, it's not everybody. It's a good number. And I believe a lot of it, honestly, you take them back. COVID did a number on a lot of people, and the way things changed for work, the way people interacted. And if you were graduating at that point, it might have just been just a really bad time period, and so you didn't learn straight out the gate on how to network, how to do this, how to interview. Things changed a lot. As far as companies go, my opinion about recruiters. It's not a great one. Same thing with HR. I think, they have a tough time. I get it. There's some good ones. I've met some amazing executive recruiters, some amazing regular recruiters as well, but it's just overall, there's a lot of inexperience, I think, on all sides, on all parties, except for, the 60-year-olds you're talking about. And yes, we are seeing a lot more people coming out of retirement, whether they were 55 and got really lucky and got to retire early, and now they're just coming back because, the ones that I've spoken with, and, I do still work on some career stuff with, clients that have been my clients for the last 20 years. I really helped them move from management to director to executives. And so I still work with them. And I have spoken to a lot of them that are like, I just got to get back in there because nobody knows what they're doing anymore. And so it's not because they need the money. They're just like, let me get in there and fix this. I guess like a grumpy old person style, just to go move out of the way. Let me do this. And, we are seeing that more and more. But also you have recruiters that are like, oh, you're just too old. I'm not hiring you. So there's all these disconnects happening. And that's what I'm saying. There's this triangulation that's happening that is just destroying the job market, and it's making it hard for anybody. And then, you add in what Gen X is going through and getting laid off. And you have all these people, all these big layoffs we've had recently, especially over the summer. I mean, starting with Microsoft in May, we're seeing people that have been there 15, 20 years, top performers getting laid off. And they're just like, what? And I heard the same with Intel. And, so what do you do after working somewhere for 20 years? I mean, to me, that's the last time anybody's going to be working at a company for so long. Loyalty doesn't exist anymore. You're not family at a company. You're family until, you get the notice, you get the Zoom call, right? So yeah, Gen Z, I feel bad for. Overall, they do get a bad rap. Things aren't going to change anytime soon. And, overall, they really need to just focus on looking at the job market differently. I think that's going to be the only way they survive this and get ahead.
I have to agree 1,000,000%. And one of if there's any Gen Z listeners, I'm not trying to offend you as a group, but I am saying that sometimes you have to accept less just to get your career started. You can't just jumpstart into a COO position because I've got a piece of paper that says I graduated from XYZ college. And a lot of times, the ones who worked their way through college in their future field of endeavor do have a leg up on those who just went out and got a piece of paper and said, hi, here I am, and show up on your doorstep. Is that fact still pertinent in your opinion?
It is. And I think the whole, I like that you brought up the degree thing, and everybody is still playing on their pedigree with that. What college? Well, I'm a PhD and I graduated from Stanford or MIT. Well, that's cool. That's not what they're hiring right now. So, and I think the younger generation plays on that big time. And, I'm going to straight out and blame colleges. I've seen enough college fairs that have invited me to come out there and see it. And man, that is some predatory stuff going on. So, what happened to Gen Z and, I would say even up through Gen X, they just, kids had to go through all of that. So they don't know what else to do other than to say, but I have a degree. I have this piece of paper, and the very fact that, we're paying 100,000 plus for a piece of paper that says, oh, hi, I graduated. Well, congratulations. That does not mean you're going to get a job either. You still have to go through it all.
I really believe that, because I believe that having that experience carries a lot of weight. We used to, and I'm just speaking from the transportation industry experience. And when I was an officer at a company, we always had these kids come in from the University of Tennessee. Look, I've got a degree in transportation. Fantastic. How many years have you worked with a trucking or rail company? Crickets. And that is the problem. Without that background and experience, how can you understand beyond the school book, textbook definition of how a corporation works in the transportation industry versus the reality? And a lot of people come out of college with this expectation of going right into management, not understanding that in my era, and I'm talking the early to late 90s, it's a very high stress position, because we were in an evolutionary period of technology with satellite tracking and communications and upgrades into Windows, et cetera, et cetera. This is another leap forward right now, where we're trying to introduce AI into the workplace at the same time using existing antiquated systems and merge them together to advance. I would hope that some of Gen Z are taking advantage of that to get ahead. But at the same time, I'm also hoping they have some work experience so they know what the hell they're talking about when they go in and try to make these changes in management.
Right now, I wouldn't say they are. I'm not seeing that change. And, I have a lot of kids. They're all in their 20s. And, so I've seen all of them do their different things. Some have their own businesses, some going, got their PhD, some are just starting, and, and some are trying to still figure it out. And overall, they're getting really frustrated on what's going on, because there's not the opportunities available that there used to be. And it's funny, I actually host a TV show every Saturday here. It's a public affairs show here in Nevada, Job Hunt, Nevada. And what we do is I actually interview experts, whether they're career coaches or people in different industries, and a lot of it is really pertaining to the Las Vegas area, which is where I'm at. But, it does, pertain to the entire state. And honestly, the advice can be looked at in every single state. And I actually had somebody on recently that is in cybersecurity. He's fantastic. He knows his stuff. He works at all the strip casinos and things like that, just dealing with their cybersecurity and tech problems. And I asked him, I was just like, point blank, what's happening? Because we're seeing all these tech jobs disappear. And, and I think this is where we have this disconnect with experience, because there's not jobs for the young people anymore with regards to tech. You have to have 2 to 3 years experience when you graduate. Okay, how does that work? And he actually said a very interesting thing, and this kind of pertains just a little bit more towards the cybersecurity, but I think it's overall tech anyway. He said that there's not entry-level jobs anymore. And I think that's correct for a lot of areas as well. What he said we are seeing, he goes, we're seeing these internships, and he goes, and they pay a lot less. And you're going to go be that field service tech. You're going to go be that person that the company just wants on site when somebody has a problem. Young people don't want to do that. And I think that's going to be we're like butting heads, we're like, there are some jobs and in the field you want, but you have to be ready to go do this to start learning and to start moving ahead. And again, like I said, I feel bad for Gen Z, for the ones that are really, really trying with all of this. And, but there are opportunities. We have to think outside the box. And I think that really just goes to the same thing that, I advise anybody, with jobs. We have to start thinking about jobs with completely different mentality. Jobs are not there. We're not going to keep having these, staying at jobs for 3, 5, 10 plus years. That's going to be rare. The way companies are working these days, it's changing. We have to start doing what's best for us. They're going to let us go tomorrow. But we have to sit there and go, okay, I'm in a job, or I'm going to go look for a job. As soon as you get that job, you need to start focusing on the next job you're going to take. You don't want to be in the group that just got, the Zoom call and said, hey, by the way, you're let go. Bye, thanks. And I don't even know if they say thanks. Actually, everybody's telling me they don't even thank them for their service or whatever. So, we have to stop thinking that they're going to be there for us. And, we get so caught up in it's not going to happen to me. I'm a top performer, or it's, they just had a recent layoff. Well, we're seeing companies do multi layoffs over the course of 6-9 months. So it can happen, and we have to start changing our mindset. And I can't stress this enough for Gen Z. You have to just go ahead and get into this mindset, because it's not even a change for you. It's just it's something to think about. But when you get into a job, start looking for a new one. You do not want to be laid off. You want to be able to go, hi, I'm going to take the high road, and I'm going to give you 2 weeks, if they want to keep you. But then you are already moving on to your next job. You're not going to have this 6, 12 plus months of job searching. That's utter hell in an unemployment, level that is just insane. And there's a lot that has to change. And I really hope anybody that is Gen Z, or if you're listening and you know somebody that's Gen Z, tell them to start thinking about that. We have to start looking at jobs differently, because companies do not care. I don't know if they ever cared, to be fair, but we have to start looking out for ourselves.
1,000%, because the 3 words I don't hear, especially from a lot of the LinkedIn type online websites, and it seems to be, well, you graduated with this, so I have to make so much to service my debt. But folks, unless you do these 3 words, build your resume, no one's going to care, right?
That is very true. I've done over 25,000 resumes. That was my career before what I do now. And, I mainly worked with, management upwards. So, I have seen it all. I've done every industry, and yes, they're important. I'm also, under no illusion that the resume is something cool. It is so outdated and antiquated, and archaic, and we shouldn't be using them. Honestly, I hate them. They're pointless. You can make somebody sound so amazing, and unless they can really do the job, it's like, well, okay. But then you're also up against recruiters that don't actually understand how to read a resume and to translate that experience. So there's a lot of problems, but it is still important today, but honestly, I really find the people that are having success finding jobs today it's not just working your network. It's not about that. It's actually really focusing on what a company is looking for today, and also where they're going in the next couple of years, and reaching out to that HR person, and reaching out to somebody big in the company, or somebody that's like, the director of that certain division that you would be going in, getting to know them, getting to talk to them, and do this again before you're looking for a job. Don't wait until you're having to do that, because then you're going to be desperate, and They're going to smell that, and nobody wants that. Yes, you need a resume for that, but honestly, you have to do a lot of the legwork, and it is, looking and researching companies and knowing what's really going on so that you can take your experience that is on your resume and make it make sense to the recruiter that can't translate it. Make it make sense to the HR manager or somebody that you're hiring, interviewing you, and really spell it out to them. And so yes, your resume needs to work, but you also need to be able to elude the fact that you can actually do what this company needs. What are their pain points? Focus on that. You're going to get ahead so much better than just having a slick resume and applying online.
Amen. Amen. So you're seeing this, you're in a great spot for this. Nevada, which is quite different from Florida in many aspects, is a generally younger population by and large. And you've had a lot of imports from California. A lot of people have migrated out of California to Nevada, but the tech migration seems to have slowed down. What are you seeing beyond the hospitality disaster that is overpriced Las Vegas? That's going to salvage the industrial base out there, because I mean, there's a lot of companies that I used to deal with in the Vegas area, and now they're starting to close shop and disappear. In fact, I'm surprised that Levi Strauss hasn't shut down in Henderson, to be honest, among many others. You're starting to see another change in the economy of individual states. And I think mobility is the key as a younger person for success. If you're between 25 and 40, be prepared to be mobile, be prepared to be a pirate. You're going to probably have to take somebody else's job at some point if you want to move ahead, but don't oversell your abilities. Have some established career. What's the best word I can use with that without going to that four-letter word? Let's just say, don't try and BS yourself through it, because anyone who has experience and been in the industry for a long time will see right through it. Agreed?
100%. It's funny. I actually all day I've been at a tech startup. Like it's been like Las Vegas Startup Week here, and I mentor regularly. I have since I moved here a couple of years ago, and so the tech scene here is big. It is a lot of the younger generation just trying to be the next big something. This is not Silicon Valley, unfortunately. Tech does struggle here because we just don't get that. I don't know. We just don't get that same cred here. That's what I see. I'm an outsider. I'm new. I know there's a big tech scene that's gone on since like the whole Zappos thing. I didn't know anything about it until I moved here, and then everybody's like, "What? You've never heard of it?" Oh, yeah, I didn't hear of that. But seeing what I see and just seeing the individuals that are really trying to do this, it's frustrating to watch a little bit, because they just expect it to be how it used to be, just golden. It was so easy. It was, there was a different time period where tech just grew years ago, and they're really just hoping to be that next one. So the tech industry is trying here. I'm not seeing it super explode, but it's trying. I will give them that. They're trying. There's a lot of programs out here. Honestly, I think, the Las Vegas area is really good to come in here, network, learn, meet people that are not from here, or learn from people that have done it, and then move out of here and create somewhere else. There's so many more opportunities outside, like you mentioned. I mean, Las Vegas is having a moment. We can't deny that. The strip I drove down the strip Saturday night, actually coming back from an event, and it's quiet. It was quiet on the strip. I remember when it used to be where you couldn't walk without bumping into people, when I'd come out here on vacation, 10, 12 years ago, and that's not the case now. However, everybody's in the casino. I get it. It's hot. I'd be in the casino too. And so, there are some casinos that are super busy, but we just had the big layoffs at MGM here, 800, from what I'm hearing from a really good friend of mine who's in the industry. Most of them were management. That's a lot of managers now loose looking for jobs. That's not just, the people cleaning the rooms and the valets and things like that. It's not just that anymore. So we are seeing massive changes. I'm not really sure. Not that I'm a super expert on Vegas. Like I said, I've only been here a couple of years, but just hearing and seeing what I'm seeing, I'm not really sure how Vegas is going to be able to handle this this stress. It's been an interesting place because I don't think Vegas as a whole has really seen this economic downturn. And the only thing that I can really, attribute it to is that there's not a lot of megacorps here. We don't have that. They don't come here because the education is really poor in this state. And overall they're just not they don't find the right workers, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of big companies. Obviously, we've seen Tesla come in under tax credits and things like that, and like you said, Levi's here. There's some big companies, don't get me wrong, but as a whole, Las Vegas is small town. We're not hired by these corporates. I don't think overall, the population here is really seeing the downturn yet. You can still go out to any of the local casinos any night of the week, any day of the week even, and they're packed. They're packed. The tables are packed. The games are packed. The events are packed. The restaurants, you have to get on a list on a lot of them. So yes, sometimes it's a little bit different, but for the most part, it's not hitting Las Vegas yet. And I think that's the key word, yet. With these big layoffs that the Strip is doing, well, what else are you going to do? If you're in hospitality and you're one of the 800 that just got cut and the other casinos are not hiring, you're leaving. You have to leave. So we're going to see some big changes here. And I think this is going to be like this in any area, Seattle with all the, or like, Washington area with all the Microsoft stuff. What are they going to do? There's not other direct industries there. So there's going to be big regional changes. I think we're going to see. I'm starting to try to overlay some of the stuff, with the relocations that people are going to do and say, okay, where are the next big areas? Where are the next big industries? And who's going to be hiring them? And, what big cities are popping up next?
Well, I think you and I can both agree on one thing. It won't be the consulting industry. Holy smokes. That is an industry which is in a really bad state right now, when you would think that mass restructuring and streamlining would be in high demand. We used to call that also getting rid of people with the consultants and blaming them, not the HR department. But seriously, it's a sad statement that the consulting industry has deteriorated to the point of being a joke based on past performance. And a lot of people came out of college thinking that with their degree in accounting, finance, et cetera, it would be a short jump into that particular arena. And now people are starting to shun the consulting industry simply because they haven't performed for the last decade. Where do you see the industry you're in? And I'm not talking about your particular forte, but a lot of the employment consulting industry, which has turned into a commercialized slop where they're just copying each other's data, copying each other's information, and trying to oversell each job to say, look at us, we can get you a job at XYZ, or 10 other consultants or services offering for someone who's young or.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, consulting is done. It's, and it's funny because you still see like McKinsey going, "Oh, we're gonna have a consultant shortage by 2030." Okay, I'll believe that when I see it. But I do think people are still going to go into consulting because they're told to, and it's kind of funny because I actually would compare people going into consulting that, they're told by their parents or their relatives that are also in consulting, and they've done that for their whole career, and it worked back then, right? And now they're pushing younger people into that as well. And I see it very similar to the younger generation. And I've spoken to some that are like, oh, I want to get into, federal work and go work for the government because, it's a lifelong job, because my aunt's been there for 40 years. And I'm like, yeah, so that didn't work. It didn't work for federal. It's this going to be the same thing with consulting, I believe, as well. And, as far as like the employment side, the consulting, when you're talking about like, the agencies that do the recruitment and stuff, yeah, they're starting to suffer. We are seeing some changes in manpower. I've actually got something that I'm working on right now. I don't have all the details yet, but there's big changes, and this is global. This isn't just the US. And I think that's what we really need to worry about, that this is not a US issue. So we can't just blame an administration on this one. This is a global thing. And this is why I really focus on that this is a corporate revolution. Everybody says, oh, revolution is like, when the people rise up. Well, this is the opposite. This is when the corporates are rising up going, no, this is what we're doing. And they are they're changing the way that jobs work. They are scaling rapidly and reshaping society faster than we can, find jobs. And there's no reabsorption back into it once you are laid off. This is what we are seeing. The scary stat. But they were saying 1 out of every people over the age of 50, when you're I couldn't imagine being in that scenario, but we are seeing that. And in my posts that I've made on X, and people that have messaged me, and I'm humbled that people message me and tell me their stories and their experience, because I can learn so much from people and what's been going on. To hear that they've been looking for years and they're like, I'm 52. I just don't feel like I'm going to find one again. That's really scary. And, with regards to the employment data, and the companies that do the outsourcing, whether you're looking at Wipro or Accenture or whomever, that is also some scary stats right there. And I do think we're going to see a lot of layoffs coming from those, which I know everybody's like, not Accenture, they just grow and grow and grow. And yes, they do grow and grow and grow, but they also shrink a lot as well. And, I'm seeing some shrinkage in Accenture. I'm seeing some shrinkage in ADP and Manpower, and companies are evolving, companies are changing, and the jobs are not catching up with it. So, yes, the corporates do know what they're doing, and they're just focused on margins right now. They're focused on scaling margins, not scaling teams anymore. So it is a scary situation right now.
Well, I'm going to take a 1-minute break. Everybody catch your breath, refresh your liquids. Amanda Goodall, thejobchick.com. That's Amanda Goodall, thejobchick.com. Check her out. Follow her on X, also known as Twitter to us old people, at thejobchick. That is someone you need to watch, you need to pay attention to, because she's getting a lot of information out, which affects your future as far as what's going to happen in career search and the goals you set for yourself. Guys, no one's an expert 100% of the time on selling themselves, even a master BSer like myself. You need someone that can help steer you and give you advice, at least generalized advice. Make sure you follow her. Also, make sure you follow MacroEdge.net, MacroEdge.net/Ozone. Go there now, sign up for a free 2-week subscription. Find out more about the future, including our real estate sites, our and some of the inside corporate reports that we're providing. More data is not your enemy. The ability to digest good data is your friend. MacroEdge.net/Ozone. Back to Amanda, because her and I have a lot of online banter back and forth. Some of it funny, some of it just breaks your heart. And one of the things that we've seen lately that breaks my heart is the people who don't understand that your shelf life, and I'd like for you to address this, because the 27-week plus unemployment data is at almost to levels of a Great Recession level. People don't want to hear that because it's a reality check. But you have a shelf life once you do lose your job. And I'd like your thoughts on that. I think it's 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, you might start going stale in the job market. Please fill in our audience.
Yeah, it's tough, and, they say, oh, however many millions it is right now. What is it? Just about 2 million that are at that, 27-week period. There's so many more millions. There's so many more people that are fighting this. And yeah, you're right. You jump into the job search and it's hard. And what, people say, oh, but you got, several weeks of, 20 weeks of severance. You're good. You're minted. That's taxed. It's taxed. It's not just this straight lump sum you get into your bank account like that, and people still have bills. And there's some worrying parts that I see, that I hear, where a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, I'm going to take a month or 2 off and I'm going to regroup. In this job market, I wouldn't, I would be jumping at that immediately. And, for the ones that are jumping right back into this, it is a case of, really putting the pedal to the metal with this one. And, you have to really jump out the gate. And this is why, getting to know recruiters and HR and people and anybody in your industry ahead of time is going to help you. So yeah, the whole unemployment numbers and the rates, and how many people have been unemployed for half a year and longer, it's just increasing. And the really scary part is, I had somebody send me this the other day, and then a video about becoming like a Door Dasher. And they were struggling to get a job because their area is oversaturated. So they got on the wait list. We're in a day and age where you can't even become a Door Dasher and have a side gig. Are we serious? Now, this is only really going to happen in the bigger cities, but my God, like what are people going to do? Because everybody has been falling back on that. And, from what I can see and what I've heard from some other people, it's the same with like Instacart and stuff like that. Certain areas are just oversaturated. They're just on a waiting list, and it could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months. Well, when somebody has to make money now, what are they going to do? So this whole situation that is going on, where it's taking so long to get a job, it's got to change. Unfortunately, companies don't seem to care. And, where this goes from now, I think we can all just guess. I think we probably all have the same opinion of what's actually happening right here. But, it is frustrating. It is heartbreaking. Like you said, the stories I get from people every single day, it's just like, it's tough. It's tough doing what I do, looking at it. I love what I do when I'm, researching the corporations and what's actually going on, and just kind of really digging into the data and kind of just looking at it from a lot of different angles, because I do work with a lot of different, finance firms and things like that. So I can look at it in slightly different ways. And that kind of gives me a little bit of hope sometimes, because I see where certain industries are going in 6 months, 9 months from now. When I am building out some of these projections on layoffs, I'm like, okay, yes, this is happening, but we're going to get over this hump. So there's a little bit of, a little bit of sunshine on the other side sometimes, but it is heartbreaking. It's hard to see, and it's frustrating. I don't know how people don't, and my heart goes out.
I'm going to bring some speakers up who want to ask you some questions, but I'm going to make this statement, and I talked about this. Taking it for someone who's been through 3 deep recessions in his life, if you have to take less just to survive, take a little bit less. You can grow back into it in your field if you stay with it, but don't sit there and just turn down a job because you think you're worth more. If you're in a recession and a company is offering you 20% less than what you're making now, there's a reason they're offering 20% less. It means they have more applicants than they know what to do with, and they can plug and play any of them. And Amanda and I talked about that, and it's sad that a lot of people are refusing to jump on the first opportunity at a reasonable salary and still have this pie in the sky dream that they can get the top dollar, especially in a declining economy. Complex numbers, please take the floor.
Good evening. I hope everybody can hear me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Been listening to you. First off, I've been following Amanda for a while now, and she's pointing out things that I don't think very many other people know or want to hear about. She's doing it well with data. I encourage anybody that has data that they can share with her to do so. If I may take a moment, though, for the last 40 years, I've been an engineer, electronic software, hardware. For the last 15 years, I've been involved in complexity science, a researcher in the area of complexity science, most specifically in economies, how economies work, and what causes their eventual collapse and transformation. What we are seeing right now is a predictable collapse of labor and the idea of labor, not only in this country, but in almost all the first world or industrialized countries. There are a lot of reasons for it, both psychological and, economic or quote, certain economic theories that we've been using for the past 45 years. I don't want to say this, but I have to. I don't see much hope at all for anybody that wants to or is trying to keep a job in any field unless we do something drastic to the concept of labor and labor arbitrage as it affects the American people, just the American people. There's no more room. There's no more room to hide how badly the economy has been treating labor for the past 45 years. There's no more room to hide. And we're just talking about labor. The underpinnings of the economy are in tatters. It doesn't matter what Wall Street is completely mathematically and almost physically unattached to the rest of the economy. And you can tell by its behavior. And then if you look in the underpinning economics of the stock market, it's a whipped cream filled balloon. It's filled with stock buybacks and 20 to 30 times hedged finance. It's not going to end well. It can't end well. It's a physical improbability that it will end well. So appreciate you, the work you're doing, Amanda. And yeah, God bless you all. I'm 68, and by the luck of God and my own skin of my teeth, I made it with a full career, minus 2 or 3 years where nobody could find a job. And we just kept wallpapering over the same sins over and over again, believing that if we kept adhering to an economic ideology that we know doesn't work, that everything is going to be fine. And it's not. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Complex. And believe me, I have strong opinions on this because of what happened to a dear friend of mine who was replaced by H-1Bs. And I won't rehash that story again. He was the best man to my wedding. And after H-1Bs replaced his job in the late 90s, he drank himself to death before he was 55. And we tried to help him. We tried to get him a new job. We tried to do things for him. But the shock of going to college and being a master programmer for 20 years of your life and then being told you're being replaced by 3 people who will work for your exact salary is something that's very hard for people to understand unless they've witnessed it personally. You have to know that.
If you would like to discuss the H-1B program and the damage and the other 22 labor arbitrage programs that are available to the third world or whoever, I would love to discuss that with you at length sometime.
Please, we're more than happy to have that discussion at another time because it has been used to sit there and suppress salaries and the middle class for 30 plus years now.
That's the obvious upfront damage that everyone can see. The damage that, again, coming from I'm a complexity scientist. I try and look at all the facets or properties, the actions and the resultants of all those interactions. The most dangerous concept of this is there's 3 things. We destroyed the entire innovative energy path from day one of America to the introduction of the visa program. We removed its energy from the path that it's been taking for 200 plus years. Okay. Second of all, we allowed our own corporations to tell the people that invented this technology that they didn't know what they were doing all of a sudden. Okay. The third one, and probably the most just insidious of all, is we allowed corporations to remove that intellectual energy from this country with a cheap excuse of we can't find labor. Okay. I don't know if that's recoverable. I honestly, God, have looked at many different pathways of trying to recover that without drastic measures. that almost nobody would accept. I think it's an unrecoverable. Is anybody familiar with Pareto and a Pareto efficiency, which is kind of what you're all talking about, just in time and making companies more efficient? Well, it's based on a thing called Pareto efficiency. And Pareto can be described by a perfect curve. Well, if you know anything about aerodynamics, it also describes a stall curve. Because on the other side of the down curve of Pareto, there isn't anything. It's not like a normal curve that goes up and goes down. It goes up, it goes down, and disappears. And that's what we've been doing with everything in this country: healthcare, education, jobs, government. How far can we push the people before they reject or just tune out completely? And when they tune out completely and reject, like we're doing right now, there's nothing past the other side for the people with power. It's a stall curve. It's Pareto. On the other side of Pareto is nothing.
Complex, thank you very much. I'm more familiar with the Pareto principle, and the 20% eventually gets crushed by the 80%, but that's basic physics. We'll talk about that another time. You have an open invite to return to MacroEdge Radio because, Don, it sounds to me like we need to sit there and have a discussion, not just about statistical analysis, but also the team probably needs to start developing some futurist analogies so we can start analyzing where we're going. And Complex hit a very, very good point. Canal, Flamenco, please take the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Amanda, first of all, thank you for your work. Today, it has been, to me personally, a victory after probably 8 years of work. I am a Big Four baby. I was pretty much raised and educated in Big Four, and my entire career I have been here for Big Four, and it have been a lot of pain and suffering in terms of I also was exposed to the experience of losing coworkers to suicide because of the layoff. I have been seeing the trend. We have, for instance, Accenture with around 400 jobs openings in the United States versus 10,000 jobs openings in India. The next target, and people like me that we work quietly in the background, is going to be their federal practice. It is not fair that they have huge federal practices with getting a lot of income. The majority of the revenue comes from the United States, and they are taking all the jobs overseas. It's not only that, it's the outsourcing, which is even more damaging. All of them have branches in India and Manila, and most of the work is being done. So pretty much their model is to have small teams in the United States that are usually from senior managers and up, that are the ones directing the work, but the people that is actually doing the work is overseas. That's how they are selling projects nowadays, and it's the standard in the consulting industry. But most of the companies are banking right now on AI, and that should be the next target. I unfortunately was laid off last year after refusing staffing my project with people overseas when I have people from the United States sitting on bench. Bench and the consulting company means that if you stay on bench for more than 3 months, 2 months, 1 month now, you're going to be terminated. Because they just wanted to be cost efficient and they wanted to staff the project with people overseas. And I was being forced to staff my project with unskilled workers that didn't have the skills at all to perform the job, but they were cheap. And I refused. First, because it was a betrayal to my coworkers, and second, because it was engaging in deceptive business practices. I knew that these people didn't have the skills to perform the job. A lot of people don't understand that when you're working for consulting companies, you are liable for those contracts and those statement of work. So it was not only a ethical matter, it was a legal matter to me. And shortly after, I was laid off, and I was clearly told that I was not reliable client. That is the reality of consulting nowadays. Today's decision is a little bit the issue with fraud, but it's not going to have a big impact with these corporations because they have to do remote work, and also they have the ability to bring people on their other type of visas. It's not necessarily an H-1B visa. It's going to address the small companies that are only accessed in the United States in papers with the purpose of bringing people in H-1B visas to do staffing work in the United States. But it's not going to address the bigger issue, that is the replacement with the remote work, which it got worse after COVID. In my last 10 years of career, I have barely worked in person or in an office. I had done all my work remotely. And the next step in my case, I was laid off last year. Unlike what Amanda said, I get a lot of calls, I get a lot of interviews, but the issue, and I did the immediate thing that I did was to take a pay cut myself. I lowered my salary in 20%, then 30%. But you're facing, for each application, you're going to get, for each job, you're going to get from 100 to 200 applicants. You look at LinkedIn, you're going to see up to 300 applicants for a role in technology in my field. So would it make it a lot more complex? I don't think that is necessarily a money issue. I have talked to a lot of hiring managers, and I think that is more the uncertainty on the market, and because a lot of them are banking on AI, especially with softwares like SAP, with Oracle. I get a lot of questions for managers, from hiring managers, about using AI to replace part of the work and business processes, especially in finance. And there have been a lot of disasters already in terms of compliance and type of fraud, but they are not talking about it. We have one of the major technology firms in the world being hit with a major fraud for using AI. They don't want to talk about it publicly. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of awareness, in terms of working into this big boom of AI that, to me, is just probably gonna go away probably in 5 years. I don't believe that AI is here to stay as they are selling it. And it's up to each and every one of us to really take the lead. This is an opportunity right now. We never have an administration that is doing what they're doing right now. I have been working on this for over 8 years, since the administration of Barack Obama, when I started tracking the visas, and he was giving around 5 million work visas per year just to Asia countries alone. And there has been a lot of work, a lot of knocking doors, a lot of reaching out to people. But it's not the bigger piece. There is a lot more going on with the job market that only the H-1 visas, and we all need to be aware of that. There is a lot of fraudulent operations. There is a lot of fraudulent companies. You need to be aware of the FBI's operations and what is going on with fraud and identity theft, and our identities being transferred, for instance, to India. Many of those have our information transferred to India. Like in my case, I'm still getting payroll notifications from one of my employers for 5 years ago. There is a lot going on. Most of us have our identity already stolen by these companies, and we need to handle this issue as a whole. and agree with somebody else's statement that protections need to be established at the Congress level. Otherwise, the consequences are going to be disastrous for the job market. It's the first time that I hear the Federal Reserve talking about concerns about the labor market. The first time in a very long time. It is not casual that the North America CEO for Accenture resigned and he's now at the Federal Reserve in Atlanta. So we all need to start looking at all the signs, because even we like it or not, this is not even a conspiracy. It's a plan. It's a plan to change the way of living of the American people. So that is my alert for today. I'm not into conspiracies. I don't like that type of stuff. But I have seen it happen for too many years already. Way too many years. Today is just like a small victory after 8 years of work for many of us. I miss the count of how many letters, how many meetings, how many doors I knocked to try to create awareness of what was happening with the H-1B visas, the amount of
Can I,
fraud with the work visas. So I think that we need to get smarter and we need to start working together to get results from Congress. Because if we don't get these protections from Congress, the consequences are not going to be good. So thank you for letting me talk. And Amanda, again, thank you so much for your work.
Canal, thank you so much for joining us tonight on MacroEdge Radio. Amanda, I'm going to give you the floor because what you heard tonight was very heartfelt from a lot of the listeners and people who follow your work. And we're at a major fork in the road as far as the concept of employment is concerned and how workers are treated, and actually how management is treated, not upper level C-suite, but middle and regional managers. Please address what you heard tonight.
Overall, everybody is focusing on the H-1B. There's a bad abuse of the system. And, like we heard, yes, everything's getting outsourced, everything's getting offshore. The H-1B is a distraction. And, the very fact that we saw the news today, and I haven't gone through a lot of it because I've been home, but it is a distraction of what's happening, because you can look at the different companies and part of what I do, Amazon alone, they, the numbers of H-1Bs compared to offshoring, it's like 40 times more offshored workers. Well, we have like 11,300 on the UCIS listed for Amazon. That's just one company. That's one company. 40 times more offshore workers. And that's not an exception to the rule at all. So we have a lot of issues to deal with. Yes, there's a lot of things that, it would be really nice if the government started dealing with. It's hard to, she mentioned conspiracy. It's hard to not feel like that sometimes, because you're just like, why is this going on? But when you look at this data and what's going on behind the scenes, and you look at the tech dinners that happen, you see a lot of what's happening behind the scenes. And it's about margins. Like I said, it's about margins, revenue, moving ahead. AI is a great scapegoat right now. And, there's a lot of applications with AI that are fabulous, fantastic, that are moving ahead and are so innovative. But, I do believe that it is being used as a scapegoat right now. We will see changes, but I do believe the change will just continue to be this offshoring, and they'll use whatever levels of AI they need to. So we are in for this for a long time, and it's not to say that it's over. we just need to be smarter on how we're looking for jobs. Like I said before, we really need to focus on ourselves and doing what's best for our own careers and our families and our livelihoods, because corporations are not looking out for us. And, they don't need to. That's not their job, but we have to look out for ourselves.
Amen, Amanda. And I appreciate you answering the listeners' concerns. And as you know, I love to finish the show with the one big question for our guests. And you've done a great job addressing a lot of the subject matter tonight, because some of it is very hard and it's very heartfelt. And it does rip you apart, especially when it hits you personally. You understand it can relate to individuals who've lost their jobs to H-1Bs or whatever, for whatever reason, bankruptcy, liquidation, you name it. In the near future, we're going to see a major change in the economy that a lot of us have recognized already, and the data will be updated, corrected, and hit sort of like the employment revisions did in the past month. What key data point are you focusing on? Because I've pretty much dismissed weekly claims as a clown show at this point in time, since we can't seem to get accurate reporting data from the states, which is hard to believe because they process those insurance claims. What do you see, though, from a national perspective as your laser focus? Are you looking at duration, or are you looking at job creation? I'm personally looking at duration and U6. I'd like to hear your take.
Honestly, I don't look at any of it because I don't buy any of it.
You're smart.
I was trying to think of a better answer than that, but I just don't buy that information. I look at the data behind the scenes, and unfortunately, that's what that's what America gets. That's what we get from the national data, and you can take it with a grain of salt. Seriously, throw a whole salt shaker behind you. It's worrying. Yes, the U6 is more likely the number. Honestly, I think it's way higher. And I do believe that the time period it takes to find a job for most professionals is way higher than this 24, 27 weeks that they're saying. It doesn't make sense. Nothing else makes sense if it's not higher. Then what's going on? So the data I look at is the data I'm going to put out on X, that I do put on my Substack as well. It is looking at the companies directly, because you can see what's going on. And I try to look up as many as possible. I have people asking me for different companies all the time, and I'm just one person, unfortunately. But you can see the big picture here. You can see the overall, just looking at the Mag 7, looking at some of the top companies out of the NASDAQ and things like that. But it's like this globally. And that's what we have to remember. This is global. This is not just about America. This is just not about the American unemployment levels. I mean, what Germany's is 3.7 or something, and look at their look at their job loss that they're having right now. The UK, you name it. This is every single country out there, and I'm really starting to try to focus on, because I'm so hell-bent on the concept that this is the corporate revolution. I'm starting to look at what's going on globally more so, because this same thing as the offshoring that's happening here in the US is happening to everybody. It's just a little bit smaller because the countries are smaller. Well, it's still on the same scale. There's still problems. And, so national data, I'm going to look at it. I'm sure I'll post about it, and I'm sure I'll have something snarky to say. But, other than that, I'm going to look at my data and try to put out as much as possible for everybody that actually wants to know what's really happening behind the scenes.
Well, now for everybody who really needs to follow what you do, tell them where to find you, where to subscribe, and what's your next national TV appearance? I'm kidding. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I don't know. Charles, call me. No, you can find me on X. For I'm the job chick, jobchick.com, and then my Substack is Insider Edge Report. And it's right there. I do put out some free ones. You can also subscribe to get the full details. And, I try to put in every single one. I try to look at the H-1Bs, the offshoring, the hiring, what's really been going on, what's breaking, compared to what they are saying in their press releases and investor relations and earnings compared to actually what's really happening, and I try to put a little bit of a perspective for job seekers, workers, and for investors. So you can kind of see none of it makes sense. It's all a narrative. But the data is out there, and let's try to keep pushing it out there. I appreciate you, John.
Believe me, we appreciate you, and we will have you on before the year is out again. Believe me, because I have a funny feeling that the revisions to the revisions of the revisions will be a talking point for us to revise again on MacroEdge Radio. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. Yes, they will definitely be revised.
Everyone have a great evening. Next week, another special program. I believe Anna Wong is scheduled to join us. We'll confirm this week and post the information on MacroEdge. And please, we have a YouTube channel. Please follow us there. We're on Apple. We're going to continue to expand the availabilities to listen to my dulcet tones and discuss what's happening in the economy, employment, and the world. For MacroEdge Radio, this is John Galt. Good night now.